Good morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever and whenever you are. This is Rune from Rune'sGuild, and I am back with another episode of RPG Horror Stories. In this particular episode, we are going to be talking about a rogue that somehow destroys an entire world and campaign. So that one should be interesting. Before we get into even longer of an introduction, let's go ahead and roll the post. The tale of how I accidentally destroyed the world and killed our campaign. Hello Reddit, I have been lucky enough to have a few horror stories while playing TTRPGs. This is one that lives in infamy and was completely my fault. Standard names change disclaimer. While I played several TTRPGs in high school, they were all homebrew with no real system, theater of the mind type events. My first real D&D campaign was with a wonderful group of people I met through work. I am a cashier at a hospital and got friendly with a regular customer who was a nurse in the building. We'll call him Boyle. We'd talk about board games, video games, LARP, and various flavors of nerddom whenever he would come in. Eventually, we became friendly enough to talk about our girlfriends. This was a significant show of trust since we worked at a Catholic facility and we were both in non-heteronormative relationships. I was a woman dating a trans woman and he was in a polyamorous polycule. He then invited me to his girlfriend's birthday party. It was at Rocky and Bullwinkle's, a Chuck E. Cheese type place. We ate cake and pizza, played video games, played laser tag, and mini-golfed in the rain, and generally had an amazing time acting like kids. As my dad likes to say, it is never too late to have a happy childhood. Having really clicked with the group, I was invited to board game nights. So, there was my fellow employee Boyle, his girlfriend Amy, Amy's husband Jake, who is our forever DM, and Diaz. Yes, I am using the names of characters from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. The games would be at Amy and Jake's house, where they had bookshelves filled with games. Diaz and I got into a competition to see who could bake the better pie, which eventually evolved into us taking turns bringing a dessert every week while someone else would cook dinner, and those Fridays were honestly some of the best in my life. Eventually, we decided, since our schedules aligned, to have every Friday together to start a D&D 5e campaign, and I got to roll up my first real character. We used all the source books, but it was set in a homebrew world that Jake made. Many of the canon gods were there, but there was also a sprinkle of homebrew gods like Destruction. Destruction was portrayed as a cat, doing what it wanted only when it wanted. They would cause floods and earthquakes, as casually as a house cat knocking a glass off a table. Funny stuff. My character was a halfling rogue who was a magpie that would steal so many shiny things. She wasn't very interested in the value of the items and would occasionally leave a token in exchange randomly. Once she stole a ball composed of mirrors and left a few rubies, for example. I was unsure of how to play, so I thought a sneaky character would be great to prevent dying immediately. I ended up with a long-range rogue that would pop in and out of hiding to rain arrows down from afar. Boyle had a lawful good human paladin that was brave and served to shield us from danger. He was our moral center and primary healer tank. Amy was a curvaceous dwarf who was a man-eater in combat, and out, but her attempts at NPC to seduction were often stymied by Diaz's character, who was a little obsessed with her. She was our main damage dealer and group mom, herding us like cats to our goals. Our antics caused her a lot of headaches, and she would often lament her babysitting duty both in and out of game. Diaz was playing a gnome bard. Her instrument of choice was to use a kazoo. She was described as looking exactly like a garden gnome, pointy red hat and all, and her hatred of tieflings was legendary. Turns out she was a tiefling and hid her horns under a hat, a plot twist I didn't find out about until after the end of the game. In battle, she mostly used vicious mockery on various debuffs. I can only remember one occasion of her dealing damage with a weapon while attempting to defend Amy's honor. Important to note was that at the time I was suffering from an undiagnosed and untreated ADHD. As a friend would say, quoting Taylor Tomlinson, "Your mental illness was like your middle name. I didn't know what it was, but I knew you had one." I cringed thinking back to how I would behave sometimes, getting distracted, wandering away, creating chaos. Bless our DM Jake for putting up with me. My and Diaz's friendly rivalry carried into the game. Much like the pie competition, we would feed off each other's chaos in-game and things would spiral hilariously. An example. There was a recurring villain that we knew very little about. He wore a mask obscuring half his face and would send goblin rat ships to harry our boat. These rat ships were described as being derelict and rotting ships lashed haphazardly into a hive of goblins and other monsters that would attack anything that came into their field of vision. On our first run-in, they crippled our sail, hooked our vessel with ropes, and boarded us with the aim of wiping us out and adding our boat to theirs. When we were winning, they cut the skipper we were on loose and sailed away. Their leader made eye contact with me and Jake, and Jake described the feeling of dread, terror, and vague recognition that shot through her, leaving my character with a feeling that he knew her somehow and was maliciously invested in her. As the rat ship puttered away, we were left adrift and our deck was littered with the corpses of goblins. On investigation, we found a branded scar on the body of a goblin, and Diaz decided to try and skin it so we could preserve the mark and hopefully garner more information later. That's metal. A low roll later, Jake informed us that she had bungled the job and ruined the skin trying to remove it. So I tried with another corpse with the same bad results. Then Diaz and I were off, competing to successfully skin a goblin first. The wood of the deck was slick with blood and chunks of goblin flesh as the halfling and gnome hacked away in their gory contest. Amy and Boyle were standing back horrified, watching as the two of us butchered close to 100 dead enemies before Jake exasperatedly said we got a passable example. On our campaign, Jake led us through fun and crazy encounters. From a hole in the bottom of the sea where we fought to escape an eldritch god and I found a possessed map that became my love interest, to a kingdom ruled by a cat-obsessed queen that was the epitome of crazy cat lady with ruby rollers in her hair and her royal bathrobe. We killed her after being promised a dog as a reward for doing so by a man in the dungeon that claimed to be the true king. Who knows? We wanted the pet. One assassination later, and we rode off into the sunset on our dire pug with the queen's head in my bag of holding. What is this group? Jake also sprinkled in fun holiday-themed encounters, like one where we fought turkey golems for Thanksgiving, or one where the rest of the party had to rescue me from a snow globe in the possession of evil Santa. How did I end up in the snow globe? Deck of many things. That's where I got for pulling out the void card. These encounters were in a different plane of existence where time flowed differently, but were still canon. All along the way, I was collecting things. We had gotten to level 14. Jake had 2 XP mechanics, I loved it. At the end of every session, we would pull a Jenga tower. For every piece you got was a set of amount of extra XP, and the loser made next week's dinner. The other mechanic was that you were allowed to dole out your extra HP as a thank you to someone who really helped you that session, or to help someone who has missed a game and hoard it for yourself. Sorry for the rambling. I blame the ADHD. Anyway, our current plot was that we were supposed to go to a magical city and speak with a mage. I honestly do not remember why. It was far away and would be a perilous journey. Or, it was supposed to be. I perused my bag of holding at this point, an extra sheet of paper listing all the stuff I was hoarding, a la Skyrim, and I had noticed the token. It had been given to us by a friendly NPC in one of our first sessions, when we had escaped the bottom of a whirlpool and had been in with the help of a Yuan-Ti sorcerer who was also trapped down there. We had gathered the components of a teleportation spell that got all of us and the NPC out. As thanks, he gave us a stone that would summon him if we needed his aid. Into my bag it went, and then we promptly forgot about it. So we summoned him and persuaded him to teleport us to the city. Poor Jake was rather bemused. Our journey was supposed to span the next 2 to 3 sessions, and he had planned it, and we just skipped past it because some of the nonsense he had given us a year earlier. So we were in the city of mages, and it was being besieged by an army of dragonborn warriors in black and red armor. Jake hinted we were supposed to arrive too late and find the city destroyed. Since we had teleported in instead of walking for a week, we were in the thick of it. We weren't supposed to fight the army, and there were literally thousands of enemies, and they possibly had ties to the BBEG who commanded the rat ships. The head mage explained to us that a legendary staff of undeath has been stolen, and without the zombies and skeletons it would summon to protect the city, they would surely fall to this invasion. So, as heroes, we volunteered to retrieve it. I'm gonna pause here, but props to the DM though, his whole plan just kind of got pushed aside, but he's just rolling with it, man. That's cool. That's really good. That's cool that he just sort of popped up and he's like, yeah, this is off, but you know what? There's this staff. Go find it for me. I'm not even bothered by this. Yeah, sure, you got here too early, but guess what? Doesn't matter. We're gonna have fun anyways, and I think that's pretty cool. I like DMs who can improv a lot. Where was I? Since we were vastly outnumbered, we tried to be sneaky. We went searching for the captain, who had the staff with the hopes of retrieving it before he figured out how to use it. Along the way, we tried to sabotage the army in many ways. We freed horses, we ruined food stores, we broke open barrels of water to make the ground muddy and slick while also depriving them of drink. I was scouting ahead because I was the most sneaky and found a stockpile of weaponry. Diaz suggested setting it on fire, and I immediately complied. This was a big mistake. The smoke and light drew the attention of the nearby soldiers, and our party scattered. Boyle ran out to try to self-sacrifice, attempting to compel a duel with the captain or the Dragonborn champion as a distraction so we could escape. Diaz was captured almost immediately. Amy was cutting a bloody swath through their forces, but was soon overwhelmed by their sheer numbers. I fled, tucked and rolling in shadows, diving behind barrels, wriggling under tent walls to try to keep out of sights. One of the tents I ducked into to avoid a platoon had a small statuette. As I moved past it, I hesitated. I took a closer look. It was an iron cat. Suddenly, I realized it was a small shrine to destruction. Outside, the canvas wall's heavy feet tromped by as the soldiers scoured the area. Far away, I heard the clanging of metal and cheers as Boyle battled for his life. As so many people have done in desperate times, I turned to religion. There was no plan. There was barely any thought. I dumped my bag of holding and piled my hoarded goods at the feet of this crude effigy. A severed tentacle from the chthonic god of the whirlpool, the hair curler rubies from the cat queen, catnip, turkey from the golems, my rations, snowy glitter from the globe, the deck of many things, and the 20k gold points worth of gems it had given me. Even the sparkly ball of mirrors tumbled out. More than a year of tokens and trophies from our joyous adventures heaped in the dirt. Finally, I grabbed my bow and arrows, slicing open my arm and bleeding upon it as I prayed with all my soul for aid. Jake had me roll a religion check. A natural 20. Even probability was listening to my prayers. He rolled behind his screen silently multiple times, and the look on his face was indescribable. Within the tent, everything grew still and silent. The canvas roof stretched into a misty infinity, and this vast nothingness swirled a presence. A larger shadow than the moon, eternal and lazy, capricious and amused. I was an insignificant mote between its paws, worth less attention than a flea. For a moment, for an eternity, by an impossible quirk of fate, I had caught the gaze of this inevitable being. Its voice so deep that the entire planet trembled. Oceans shifted as it purred at this fleck of dust. What do you wish? It would aid me for the novelty of it. To do so meant nothing to such a universal being. So many things flickered through my rogue's mind as she contemplated what she wanted. Safety, family, joy, adventure. I cleared my throat and begged shakily. Destroy this army, to save my found family, to prevent the end of all this. Claws larger than mountains and sharper than death slowly sank into the earth as an incomprehensible sense of acceptance echoed across eons. This continent sundered, mountains splitting and forests turning to ash. Destruction had come to the land, everything faded to black. Out of game, there was silence. Everyone stared at each other blankly around the table. Jake looked like he had a blue screen behind his eyes. DM.exe has crashed. Where did we go from here? Jake slowly closed his book and dropped a stack of note cards into the trash, all his notes for upcoming sessions. We had derailed him before, but nothing like this. Everyone went home, next session was cancelled. Then every next one became board nights. Our campaign was done. We tried once, a month later, to revive it, but everything was changed. We're still friends and get together to hang out fairly regularly, but gone were the Friday dinners where dice hit the tables and shortly after the plates. I guess Jake had granted my character the wish spell, so she had gotten what she had asked for, but with bad side effects. The continent had literally splintered as the gods of destruction destroyed the army and everything else. We have played other games, but the book was closed on those characters. Thanks for reading. Sorry about the links to the story. Too long didn't read. Character summons a god, accidentally destroys the world, ends campaign. Edit. So Jake saw this and shed some extra light. He said I had gained the favor of the god because I had so many things specifically interesting for a cat. Since it was a god of material destruction, that was the only way he could think to have it react. And that beneath the Mage City was a vault with several artifacts that would come into play in later storylines. He had rolled repeatedly for the number of different artifacts he had planned to be there and got nothing but low numbers and thus dubbed them destroyed. So, there's the previously contained big bads and the demon that were released all at once from several of Pandora's boxes, and even a jar that contained a rip in the fabric of reality itself that opened into the abyss. He had legitimately planned for almost a year of quests using this city as our quest hub, and they had all triggered at once. He was just overwhelmed of how to salvage anything he had planned and daunted by the idea of scrapping it all and starting over. I still feel guilty for initiating this Jenga tower collapse. That was longer than I anticipated, but that was actually kind of awesome. I really like that. I like that the DM was just so ready to just thrash everything he had just to make sure that the player's wish was like totally like taken care of. That is awesome. That was a really cool story. I don't think Rogue needs to feel bad at all. I get like, yeah, Rogue ended the campaign with that wish, but like at the same time, where could that have campaign had gone really, you know? Like everybody was getting captured, everybody was like, I feel like the others were probably gonna die, right? So like that wish like destroyed the army. Sure, it destroyed the continent and then like released a bunch of evil, but like imagine that. Imagine if Jake uses this, the DM uses this world as like extra homebrew, like he can include that, like all this stuff can be like later on in the future. I think that is really awesome, and I'm just in awe. That was cool. I liked it. I don't really have anything else to say about that. There's nothing I can do. I mean, apart from saying like, okay, well maybe Jake didn't have to go with it if he didn't want it to like be destroyed or something, or like he could say like, oh, the sorcerer doesn't have teleport, so you can't get to the city on time, or you know, just have them teleport to the city to like after it had been destroyed. You know, like they would have just, you know, it got destroyed like a week earlier. I don't know. Like he could have done a few things to not derail it, you know, per se. But like at the same time, I think it's cool how it turned out. I think that's a cool ending. You know, and obviously it might have been like a really fast ending, but like it was still cool. That's all I have really to say about this. If you enjoyed, leave me a like, leave me a comment, leave me a subscription. In the comments, add your own horror stories. If you don't have any, good job. If you can't think of anything to comment, go ahead and just say something about cats. Anything about cats that you want to say. That is going to do it for me, though. Thank you for tuning into this episode, and I will see you in the next one.